Welcome to Mike and Rad's Hobby Corner. This is the corner. For this video, I'm going to make a 2x2 foot trench board. Once I figured out the layout, I started cutting pieces of XPS foam and glued it down. Next, I did a bit more shaping and added tinfoil around the ridges to define the shape. And then I put on the first coat of a muddy texture paste. Here I started adding details like the corrugated paper and hobby stick supports along the walls and the raised platforms to shoot out, and then began making duck boards out of more hobby sticks. Then I started priming it by hand, but that honestly was kind of time consuming, so for the rest of the duck boards on the board I ended up using spray primer. To make sure I didn't melt the foam on these raised platforms, I used craft paint and Mod Podge to coat those. I started taking measurements to figure out how wide all the duck boards needed to be, and then got to work on cutting lots and lots of hobby sticks. Time to start adding in more corrugated paper along the side walls of the trenches. These I base coated with black and then spray painted silver so that I didn't have to go back in and paint them by hand once they're already in. So this way I was able to just cut and fit into place as I went. This was taking a long time, so I eventually started using a hobby saw and rubber banding a bunch of sticks together so that I could saw them all at once. That kind of saved a lot of time, at least to get a bunch of sticks ready at the same time. Then I started using spray primer on all of the duck boards so that I could just cut and fit them in place as I needed. And here's a closer view of everything. You can see there's some spaces that still need duck boards, so I'll have to cut a few more and glue those up and prime them before placing them down. After getting those last few duck boards put together and primed, I was able to start placing them down. Finally, with all the duck boards placed, I could go in with some brush-on primer and clean up any rough edges from the cuts. Here I started using a pre-mixed grout to even out the outside surface so that it was all uniform. I used the pre-mixed grout, but you can use spackle or any kind of filler. Once that had a little time to dry or cure, I went back over with some water and the putty tool I was using and my hand and paper towel and all sorts of things to try to even that surface out so it was a little more smooth. Adding the grout helped add a lot of weight and rigidity to the sides of the terrain board, and I went in the next morning once it was fully cured to start painting the border black. It's about this time I want to add another coat of the texture paste, so I start mixing together some brown paint, Mod Podge, a bit of sand, and a little bit of black just to tone it down, and mix that all. And here I forgot to press record, but managed to remember at the very end, so this is me adding on the last coat of texture paste. Here I'm cutting some more sticks for supports along the walls of the trenches, which I ended up using wood stain to color them before placing them in. And finally started dry brushing the wood duck boards with some browns and then eventually a tan over top to make it look closer to wood. And once that is done, it really kind of pops to life and separates it from the rest of the board, I think. Then I come in with some brown and start dry brushing along the top to highlight the raised edges. And finally I mixed up a black and brown wash to cover basically the entire thing to bring it back down to that kind of grimy, grimdark look. And once that had time to dry, I started placing down some models because I was pretty excited with how it was looking. And unless it wasn't obvious at this point, I'm mostly planning to use this board for Trench Crusade or Killteam. Finally, the very last thing I did was used some red speed paint and splattered that around with a brush to add some blood splatter, which I think helps sell it looking like a war-torn battlefield. And finally, the last few glamour shots, and here's the board. Thank you so much for getting to this point in the video. Can't wait to actually get a game on this board. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up or like, leave a comment, subscribe for more. Planning to make a lot more terrain and mini painting videos, maybe even some like D&D stuff. And if you like what I'm doing, consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you.